Good evening, ladies. An average of around $55,000 per year, 26% below the workforce average, because of extreme competition, limited opportunity and economic pressure. The cancellation of the show takes away the income that Infected Mushroom would have earned and could also impact their future bookings. It is incredibly unfair, disgraceful and inexcusable to cancel Infected Mushroom's sold-out show after the effort and investment that went into creating, planning and promoting a concert, undermining their decades-long dedication to unifying audiences through joyous, entertaining music. So, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, we strongly believe that UniBar Adelaide should have allowed Infected Mushroom to perform. Not only has UniBar succumbed to prejudiced social media pressure targeting Infected Mushroom's planned performance, they violated their own stated principles of supporting all artists. If we don't take a stand against unfair actions that restrict performers based on nationality, we set a precedent for future music events. UniBar Adelaide should have allowed Infected Mushroom to perform. Thank you.
I call upon second negative speaker, Harry Ellison.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic of tonight's debate is that UniBar Adelaide should have allowed Infected Mushroom to perform. We strongly believe this statement is false. Our first speaker has already explained that UniBar Adelaide has a legal duty of care to protect patrons, staff, and artists. And they also talked about how that the reputation of certain controversial acts, such as Infected Mushroom, build foreseeable risks with which the UniBar's management teams were justified to avoid. Today I'll be discussing two key points. Past controversies surrounding Infected Mushroom have led to cancellations elsewhere, and the unpredictable nature of the modern world causing social unrest. Our third speaker will rebut the opposition and summarise our team case. Before I begin, I'll rebut the points of the affirmative team. The first speaker said venues should not overreact to political unrest. This is false because in today's climate, protests around controversial acts can escalate quickly. For an instance, a 2019 Melbourne concert was cancelled after safety fears linked to political clashes, proving that these risks are real, not hypothetical. UniBar actors on this reality by being on the side of caution. Choosing safety first is not weakness. It is sound risk management. Protecting lives, the university's reputation, and avoiding potential lawsuits must always come before one performance, no matter how popular the act. The second affirmative speaker has stated that this is a decision or one that is political. This is completely false. The university had cancelled this gig because the duet's performance cited safety concerns. The university has made it very clear the decision was free of politics, and in the same scenario, a pro-Palestinian or pro-Palestinian performance would have been cancelled, which has occurred before on a number of occasions. Before I get into my points, I would like to remind the audience that the negative team defined Infected Mushroom as controversial and UniBar Adelaide as its management team. Now to my first point. My first point tonight is that Infected Mushroom has a documented history of controversy, which makes UniBar's precaution understandable. This is because, in multiple countries, their scheduled performances have been cancelled or heavily protested due to public backlash, sometimes with Infected Mushroom's own agreement. For example, in 2018, a planned Melbourne concert drew organised protests from political activist groups concerned about the band's Israeli background. Police had to monitor the venue closely, and online campaigns called for cancellation. Incidents like these are not one-offs. Whenever Infected Mushroom performs in politically sensitive contexts, public protest is a foreseeable safety risk. UniBar can reasonably predict through their safety risk management framework that hosting them in October during a tense political climate will likely draw similar attention, and we know that vitriol, that is bitter criticism, has already been levelled at the staff of the venue, foreshadowing the potential for violence. Some people may claim this is censorship, but UniBar Adelaide have clearly stated that this is not the case. Their media statement reinforced their apolitical stance and that risk to safety is their foundation of the decision. Unrest follows controversial bans like infected mushroom, making UniBar's decision to cancel precautionary and valid. Now to my final point, that current world events are highly unpredictable, and with recent politically charged protests happening in Adelaide, UniBar's decision not to allow infected mushroom to play was justified. Consider the sudden death of Charlie Kirk, a deeply polarizing US political figure. Despite his vast fan base with 2 million social media followers, he was shot just 8 days ago on a university campus. His death was not something anyone foresaw, yet it had immediately ignited waves of political commentary and tension. This demonstrates how volatile and unpredictable highly charged figures and events can be. Just last month, on the 24th of August, Adelaide saw an estimated 10,000 people take part in the largest pro-Palestine demonstrations in Australia's history, with the next scheduled to take place on Sunday the 28th of September, according to the local press in Daly. Whilst this rally has no links to infected mushroom, it demonstrates that increased domestic political tension in Adelaide, and this, combined with the bitter criticism already levelled at UniBar Adelaide for hosting infected mushroom, meant that the only sensible precaution to avoid risks to health and safety was to cancel the performance. So, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, both infected mushroom's history of controversy and the current global climate of social unrest and unpredictable protests justify UniBar's cancellation concert as a response and necessary precaution. Thank you.
I call upon third affirmative speaker, Tani Morton.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic of tonight's debate is that UniBar Adelaide should have allowed infected mushroom to perform. We, the affirmative team, assuredly believe that this statement is true. Before I present my team's case, I'd like to address the defects in the negative team's arguments. The opposing team's first speaker has argued that allowing infected mushroom to perform could have stirred confronting feelings in the community, regardless of the band's own actions. I'll refute this simply by saying that the cancellation's commotion has reached larger crowds than the band's initial plan to perform. And yet, even if that wasn't true, infected mushrooms still should have been allowed to perform because, as our second speaker said, there is always going to be conflict and there are always going to be triggering subjects. But restricting artists from performing because their nationality is currently one of those triggers is not an acceptable reaction. The first negative speaker has also tried to justify cancelling infected mushrooms' performance on the grounds that the artists are too controversial for safety. That argument is simply prejudice. In fact, according to Australia's Migration Act, to receive a visa you must pass a character test. If infected mushrooms was truly the problem in this controversy, the government would not have allowed them in the country. As our second speaker said, these unsafe allegations are purely based on their nationality. The duo are not at fault for these allegations any more than they are at fault for the place they were born, and therefore their show should not have been cancelled. The first and second speaker have expressed concern for the people under UniBar Adelaide's duty of care regarding social media abuse. This argument is invalid, considering that everyone is able to quit or just take a break from social media, especially if they deem that necessary for their mental or emotional health. Online resources like Lifeline, Headspace and Reach Out, as well as Smart Recovery Australia, which can also be face-to-face, all will offer support for those struggling to stop social media. The problem can be dealt with without cancelling a sold-out show. The negative team's second speaker has tried to convince you that Infected Mushroom's show needed to be cancelled to err on the side of caution. However, this could be done without cancelling a sold-out show. As our first speaker said, the UniBar Adelaide venue has a security detail in place, and having received protest threats prior to the event, had the opportunity to request police backup. These forces are trained for managing unwelcome or unsafe situations, and therefore could have minimised and prevented danger if UniBar Adelaide had responded by supporting the event and the people there rather than cancelling it. The second negative speaker has talked about previous events that have ended badly. This does not mean that UniBar Adelaide should have cancelled Infected Mushroom's show, because UniBar Adelaide, as our first speaker said, had warning about these protests and potential dangers and could have responded preemptively. I will now present my team's case. UniBar Adelaide should have allowed Infected Mushroom to perform. The consequences of their failure to do that are potentially ruinous. Our first speaker spoke about the regular safety measures readily available to protect staff, performers and crowds, effectively refuting UniBar Adelaide's justification. She also discussed the alarming consequences of rewarding intimidation tactics, backed by the theory of operant conditioning. Our second speaker proved that Infected Mushroom, a non-political band, are not at fault for any social media vitriol directed towards them or the venue, and should therefore not have been cancelled. She then emphasised the devastating effects that this cancellation had on the artistic enthusiasts involved, their fan base, and Infected Mushroom themselves, who could have been deeply harmed with further speculation, a tarnished reputation, as well as the losses of income and artistic expression. So, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, UniBar Adelaide's decision to cancel the show was a devastatingly unreasonable response to backlash, and now Infected Mushroom is forced to shoulder the consequences. If the venue had used the safety measures accessible to them, the show could have gone ahead without safety concerns. Cancelling it instead, they encourage more safety concerns and rip performers away from their art based on social media speculation that stems from the performer's ethnicity. Thursday, September 11th, 2025. UniBar Adelaide could have joined the fight against prejudice and helped artists like Infected Mushroom create a unified music space. UniBar Adelaide should have allowed Infected Mushroom to perform. Thank you.
I call upon third negative speaker, Oliver Matthews.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for our debate is that the UniBar Adelaide should have allowed infected mushroom to perform. We, the negative team, firmly believe that this statement is false. Before I summarise and conclude our team's argument, I would like to contest some points made by the opposition. The second and third affirmative speakers have claimed that not allowing infected mushroom to perform is anti-Semitic or racist. The claim that this decision is anti-Semitic or racist is completely false. A private venue has increasingly heightened safety measures that they have to abide by to ensure a safe performance. UniBar did not make this decision politically or racially. UniBar even stated that it couldn't find compelling evidence to suggest that the band was promoting a Zionist ideology. It was made to protect concert goers and even protesters from the violence or chaos of a political brawl. This decision would have been made and has been made for pro-Palestinian protests, citing safety concerns, such as the cancellation of the Story Bridge March. Except this one is much more important to cancel, as it is a smaller private venue with legal obligations to concert goers. The third affirmative speaker has tried to tell you that the ban isn't controversial, but international examples prove otherwise. Infected mushrooms' nationality and timing of the concert could spark politically motivated protests. Whether these protests are okay isn't the question at hand. The question is whether this event would have been safe or not, given pro-Palestinian and potential counter-protesters to those pro-Palestinian protesters, such as the March for Australia, where conflicts turned violent. UniBar acted responsibly by avoiding a volatile situation, and infected mushroom acknowledges this. The second affirmative speaker has said that the audience wanted them to perform. Whilst we can see that the popularity surrounding infected mushroom, this can often draw crowds that are equal to or even larger than the supporting crowd. One point that has been failed to be acknowledged is the rights of the workers at UniBar Adelaide to be free of harassment, threatening or heated scenarios, or even potentially violence. Along with the performers themselves and concert goers, this isn't a fair burden to be placed upon the workers and the crowd. UniBar cannot delegate its duty of care to the crowd. Even one escalation or injury can lead to serious legal consequences. The first and third speakers said that UniBar should prioritise artistic freedom over safety. This is false because the Australian venues have a legal duty of care under the Occupational Health and Safety Act 2004 to protect patrons, staff and students and performers from foreseeable harm. Cancelling infected mushroom fulfilled this duty. If UniBar had gone ahead and an incident had occurred, the venue could face lawsuits and reputational damage. Safety must outweigh entertainment. Ignoring legal responsibilities in favour of one concert would have been reckless and irresponsible, placing lives and livelihood at risk. The first affirmative speaker has tried to tell you that UniBar is just a regular music venue, but it isn't. UniBar is part of a university, which means that it has heightened obligations to protect young students and maintain a safe campus environment. Additionally, the concert is conducted in an open space, which is easily accessible. The same reason was cited at a venue in Cairns, however the concert was moved to an out-of-town, closed-off, private venue, off-campus grounds, which allowed the concert to proceed. This decision was made by the band themselves. The original venue didn't cancel them, only heeding a warning and a condemnation. The band made a safety decision in Cairns and have made the same decision here. The second and third affirmative speakers have tried to tell you that the other venues allowed the band to perform and UniBar is being unfair. But each venue faces different legal obligations and risk levels. UniBar is a university-affiliated venue with young students, meaning it has stricter responsibilities. Additionally, it is particularly open, accessible, and given it is a private venue on private grounds, which are largely accessible, it would have had to personally hire security or draw on largely underprepared university security team. Just because another venue proceeded does not make it safe or responsible here. The second affirmative speaker has told you that the band is innocent. This could very well be true, but that is not the question at hand. We argue that the question at hand is the safety of the staff, concert goers, and performers themselves. There is absolutely no doubt at hand that the band is controversial right now, regardless of whether you agree with their allegations or not. This undeniably draws attention to the event and the performers themselves, often in-person protests that sometimes turn aggressive. This can compromise the safety of attendees, workers, and the duet themselves. Infected Mushroom agrees, cancelling a number of shows previously, and even the upcoming one in Cairns, Tours venue, was moved to a place far outside of Cairns as a last resort compromise. This isn't the only venue that this band could perform at in Adelaide, so clearly the duet had agreed with the citing of safety risk by the UniBar and has chosen not to come to Adelaide for their safety. Our first speaker, James, explained that the UniBar has a clear legal duty to prioritise safety. Work health and safety law demands venues act on foreseeable risks or face liability for negligence. Past tragedies like the Love Parade disaster prove these consequences. He wanted to say infected mushrooms' presence carried political weight, regardless of their intentions. Protests linked to Israeli performers have disrupted events worldwide, and Adelaide's changed climate magnified that risk. Crowds, alcohol, and emotions escalated quickly, with 1 in 5 protests outside concerts turning unsafe. UniBar was right to act preemptively to protect its community. Our second speaker, Harry, told you that infected mushrooms has faced repeated cancellations and protests internationally, including in Melbourne in 2018. This demonstrates a clear, foreseeable pattern of unrest around their shows. UniBar explicitly stated safety, not censorship, guided their decision. Given the prior vitriol, thank you.